What is up, YouTube? Dottz Gaming here, and today I'm finally bringing you guys my Havoc Demon Hunter PvP guide. So I've been doing a lot of testing, a lot of research, and discussion with high-rated players to try to bring you guys the best guide I could possibly bring you. And this is what I've come up with as the most optimal build in my opinion. I'm also going to talk about some variations in the build if you want to tailor it more towards a different playstyle, but this is what I think works the best right now. In terms of the current state of Demon Hunters, based on the release date of this video, we are a bit weak. Since all of the nerfs have gone through, we have very low utility and survivability, and our damage is not as good as it should be, being that those other two things are pretty weak. But being that we're suffering in both PvE and PvP, I have to imagine that buffs are on the horizon. But anyway, let me actually get into the meat of this guide. So I'm going to talk about this stuff today. Talents, honor talents, macros, your artifact weapon, and your rotation. So this video is going to be your one-stop shop for everything about playing your Demon Hunter in PvP. So moving into it, let's talk about our regular talents. So on the first row, Fel Mastery is basically mandatory, and the reason it's mandatory is because, one, it gives you a really good increase to your damage on your Fel Rush, which ends up becoming one of your hardest hitting abilities, but the main reason you want it is for the 25 Fury that gets granted when Fel Mastery, or when Fel Rush hits one target. That's a lot better than Chaos Cleave, which, makes your Chaos Strike hit an additional target if it hit 50% damage, or Blind Fury, which increases the duration on I-Beam by 50%. I wish this talent was better, but as long as I-Beam is going to be kickable, there's really no point taking this for PvP. You're just going to get kicked and you're just going to get locked down on it. And as long as Fel Mastery has that 25 Fury being granted upon one target being hit, it's going to be our mandatory talent. Now, the 100 and the 106 talents kind of tie together, but this is what I think is the best one, and that is Prepared. It reduces the cooldown of your Vengeful Retreat by 10 seconds and generates 40 Fury over 5 seconds if you damage at least one enemy with Vengeful Retreat. So that ties in with our 106 talent. I'm just going to skip to it because I have to talk about these two as a pair. Momentum, which is your Fel Rush and Vengeful Retreat, increase your damage done by 20% for 4 seconds. So without Prepared, your Vengeful Retreat has a 25-second cooldown. With Prepared, it has a 15-second cooldown. Now, if you could lower that cooldown to make it so that your momentum has higher uptime, you're going to want to take it. It also gives you a lot more mobility so that you can move around, being that Vengeful Retreat does throw you a good distance, and it gives you good Fury generation, Now, if you don't like using Vengeful Retreat a lot, and you want to play a little less optimal build, you could go Demon's Blades, which replaces your Fury generator, Demon's Bite, and replaces it with a passive, which gives your auto attacks a 75% chance to deal additional shadow damage and generate Fury. I think the ability's okay. I played with it for a week or two at one point, and my only issue with it is that it's very bursty. There are times where, let's say you're in meta and you want Fury now, you end up feeling like sometimes RNG doesn't go in your favor and you're waiting for Fury, so you're basically wasting your Metamorphosis duration, which is the most important part about being a Demon Hunter. So it doesn't give you reliable Fury, and plus Prepared just works better with momentum. You have a lot more mobility, it gives momentum a much higher uptime, and it's just, in my opinion, better. Demonic Appetite, I used this for a long time, but unfortunately I switched away from it to go to Prepared. Chaos Strike has a chance to spawn a lesser Soul Fragment, and consuming any Soul Fragment grants 30 Fury. I believe this also has a 15-second internal cooldown. I could be wrong, but I've seen a couple sources that say it does. And and I think the Soul Fragment heals for about 10% of your max health. Demonic Appetite's very good for world questing and solo PvP, like if you're going into, I guess, like a battleground or a world PvP. But I personally just prefer Prepared all the time. It's what I use in Arena, so it's what I want to be comfortable with and what I want to just use. So Prepared is probably the best one in this tier. 102, Bloodlet is still king even after the nerfs. Throw-Glaive causes the target to bleed for 150% damage, inflicted over 10 seconds, and if you reapply Bloodlet, the effects stack. Fellblade is going to continue to be bad until it deals chaos damage for Havoc. I really would like to see this ability be better because it is pretty cool, but because it deals fire damage, your mastery doesn't affect it, so its damage is pretty bad. And I really still like First Blood. I wish it was better, but unfortunately it puts too much into your Swifty one-shot burst, and it lowers your sustain but ups your burst. And being that sustain is our really, really big weak point right now, if you spec into First Blood, you're more reliant on killing someone in Metamorphosis. So if you don't, you're kind of just creep without paddle, and you really won't have any damage after that. Also, just in terms of math, Bloodlet will net you more damage overall, because Throw Glaive it deals more damage than Blade Dance, I think, at a base level, and Bloodlet gives you 1.5 times that damage, while First Blood only gives you 1 times that damage, so you get an extra 100% damage versus extra 150% damage. And Bloodlet can also cleave, while this only works on your first target hit, so Bloodlet is still the king. 104 tier, Soul Rending all the time. It says gain 100% leech while Metamorphosis is active, but this is only in PvE. In PvP, it's actually a 40%, but it's still better than the other two. Netherwalk replaces your blur and brings it up to a 1.5 minute cooldown, which is, I already immediately don't like it. And it causes you to gain movement speed and become immune to damage, but you can't attack for 5 seconds. Now, the way the Demon Hunter kit is, you want to stay in the fight while your defensive cooldowns are up. It almost is better for you too, because especially when you're gaining this leech, you have dodge chance with blur, you have reduced damage, and this is for 10 seconds on a 1 minute cooldown versus 5 seconds on a 1.5 minute cooldown. And Soul Rending allows you to stay in the fight and keep yourself alive, especially if you're against a hunter or a death knight. You could death sweep, and you will gain a lot of health back. Desperate Instincts gives you no control over your blur. I don't like it, especially because blur you can use to generate charges of Fel Rush with your artifact trait, so just not a good talent. Fel Eruption for the 106, never take it. It's bad. 2 seconds stun. All it does is it ruins your DR. Never take it. In terms of Momentum versus Nemesis, I used to run Nemesis because I was lazy, but Momentum is definitely the way to go. The problem with Nemesis is if you're facing against a Pally, if you're facing a Mage, and you want to go on either one of them, they can just take this off with either Bubble or Ice Block, and your 2 minute cooldown's effectively wasted. Also, Nemesis, if you put it on one target and you guys decide to switch, that buff is essentially useless. Momentum allows you to deal 20% damage to everybody, not just one target, for 4 seconds whenever you use Fel Rush or Vengeful Retreat, and you have 2 charges of Fel Rush on 10-second cooldowns, and 1, obviously, charge of Vengeful Retreat if you run this build on a 15-second cooldown. So this will, you'll be able to switch targets freely with this, as opposed to Nemesis. So Nemesis was good back when we used to run our big one-shot builds, because it was kind of brainless. You just kind of throw it on your target and you deal a lot of damage, but we don't have that anymore. So I think Momentum is definitely the way to go. 108, really no choice. You have to run Master of the Glaive. For some reason, we do not have a built-in snare, so you just need this. Also, it pairs very good with Bloodlet, being that you have 2 charges of your Throw Glaive, and those bleeds will stack if you throw them onto the same person. So it just works best, in my opinion, especially with this build. Unleashed Power and Demon Reborn are just not even close to good enough. They're just not. Now, 110 is another tier where you have some choice. I like to run Fel Barrage, and I used to be a huge hater on this ability. But being that our mastery was nerfed a while back and into the frickin' floor, Fel Barrage, I feel, gives us much more consistent damage. Chaos Blade, yes, is nice burst every 2 minutes, but even it's kind of low. It says increases all damage by 20% based on mastery for 12 seconds, but when we're in PvP, our templates bring us all the way down to 12%. So all you're doing is really giving yourself a 12% damage increase while you're in Metamorphosis, and your auto attacks deal 200% increased damage and cause chaos damage. It does sound good on paper. It is a good option, but Fel Barrage allows you to cleave better. It still does good damage single target, and it is up a lot. You have more consistent damage in between your Metamorphosis, which is a huge problem of ours. It's a huge problem. And I've also... Fel Barrage hits hard. It does a lot of damage, especially if your momentum buff is up. And I just feel that for us, it is the best option right now. It shores up one of our weak points, which is sustained damage. It assists on one of our strong points, which is our AoE, and it makes it even stronger. And I just find that it is a much more consistent ability than Chaos Blades, because especially if you pop Chaos Blades, it only has a 12-second duration, so if you get CC'd on your Chaos Blades, well, you essentially just wasted the cooldown. So I find Fel Barrage much more useful. Now, Honor Talents. I'm going to kind of go through these a little bit quicker because they are pretty self-explanatory. First tier, you need to choose between Gladiator's Medallion and Relentless. I'd say go Gladiator's Medallion if you're against a team where you're worried about getting completely blown up at 1 CC and you need to get out of that CC immediately. Otherwise, I think Relentless is going to be your best option. But you can switch between these two really based on personal preference. It's not going to make or break a situation. Now, generally, on the regular, I'd go Reinforced Armor, which increases your health by 10%. But if you're against double melee in PvP, you want to go Sparring, because this will blunt their damage. It has a 20% chance to reduce it by 50%. Good ability. Now, on a normal schedule, regular type deal thing, I run Cover of Darkness all the time. It increases the chance for your allies to avoid damage while being in your darkness effect by 50%. Darkness, pretty much without this, is almost kind of useless. It gives you a 20% chance, and it's very, very low. This actually makes it useful. The only other time I could switch Think into Solitude is if you're playing with a ranged character in 3s and you want that extra 15% damage. But if you're playing a melee cleave or you're just PvPing normally, I think Cover of Darkness is going to be much better for you. It's going to give you a lot more defensive capabilities. Now, on the next tier, you're going to want to basically pick between these two, Reverse Magic and Eye of Lithoris. I stay with Reverse Magic most of the time because of the utility it brings. It dispels all harmful magical effects from yourself and your nearby allies within 10 yards and sends them back to the original caster. So, Dottz, certain CCs like Hodge and Chaos Nova, it sends them all back. Polys. Eye is really good in theory. I like the ability. I think it's really cool. My only issue with it is it's dispellable. So, I'd kind of have been gravitating away from it and going on Reverse Magic a lot more. The next tier, Awaken the Demon Within. I'm not going to even talk about the other two because this talent is just too good. When you reach 50% health, you automatically gain meta for 6 seconds, so you'll gain Leech for that 6 seconds. And that effect has a 1-minute cooldown. But if you are in meta, you're leeching, but you still drop below 20% health, it gets refreshed up to a maximum of another 6 seconds. So definitely a good talent to run, and I wouldn't even consider the other two. Now, the final tier, Detainment, Reign of Above, Mana Break. You can literally run any of them, and it's completely dependent on the comp you're facing. On a normal basis, I will run between either Detainment or Reign from Above. Detainment is good if you want more CC in your comp. It makes your Imprison work on players, but it has a 1-minute cooldown on the ability, which kind of sucks. Reign from Above is very good for 2s, or if you're against double melee that's not a Death Knight, because Death Knights can just grip you down. If you're against double melee, not a DK, Reign from Above is good. It'll get you out of sticky situations. Mana Break is good if you want to run a Rot comp, and your goal is to... This is a second win condition, basically. If you get to the end of the game and someone's you can almost one-shot them with Mana Break because of how strong it is when people have low mana. But you can really run any 3 of these talents. I would say Detainment is the most stable one. Like, you can almost run it at any time, and Reign from Above and Mana Break have their niches, but Detainment is just better on a regular basis. So, moving into macros, this is literally going to take me about 2 seconds because we have next to no macros. So, literally, Focus Kick, Focus Imprison, and I have a macro with Blur that just also lets me use my health stone and like a trinket that I have. The trinket can't even be used inside of PvP, but just in case playing with the Warlock, I can health stone. But that's literally all we have in terms of macros. Demon Hunters really don't have much of anything on the front of macros. Now, moving into the artifact weapon. This is currently what I have fleshed out, but I'm going to show you the path. Obviously, you're going to start at Fury of the Illidari. You're going to come to Warglaives of Chaos, come over here to Sharpened Glaives, and then sweep all the way up to Rage of the Illidari, so that when your Fury of the Illidari ends, 60% of the damage it deals erupts in an explosion of energy. It's really good burst if it's on one target. I like it. It's really good. After that, you're going to want to sweep up to Anguish of the Deceiver, which will now make your I-Beam actually useful. It's such a cool ability, and I was so happy when I got this. Each time I-Beam deals damage, it applies Anguish. I think it'll apply up to 10 stacks if you don't take Blind Fury, which deals chaos damage on the victim when it explodes per application. Really, really good. It actually makes your I-Beam useful in a single target situation, which is nice. Then after that, you want to come down here to Inner Demons, Chaos Strike has a chance to unleash your inner demon, causing it to crash in your target and deal extra damage to all nearby enemies. It's okay. It's not nearly as good as the other two, which is why I go for it last. After that, you want to get Demon Rage, then Contained Fury, and then this crappy Overwhelming Power trait. So, relatively simple. So the next thing I'm going to go over is your rotation. So, the big thing is to maximize your damage inside your momentum buff. Now, the spell priority I'm about to tell you about is the same inside and outside of momentum. So, it's Fury of the Illidari is your number 1, then Annihilation, which is your Metamorphosis Chaos Strike, Fel Barrage if you chose to take it, Eye Beam with Anguish, Throw Glaive with Bloodlet, and Chaos Strike. And then if there's 3 or more targets, you want to use Blade Dance / Death Sweep. And when you're bursting, it's pretty simple. You just Metamorphosis on top of your target, throw down your Fury of the Illidari, and then start going to town with those Annihilations while maintaining your momentum buff. It's pretty simple. Now, the one thing that I found noteworthy that I don't know if a lot of people know is Vengeful Retreat is off the global cooldown. So, depending on your positioning when you're fighting your target, you can actually squeeze in a Chaos Strike as you're leaping back. But what I always found was hard was that a lot of times I felt like when I Vengeful Retreated, I usually put myself out of position, and I lost a little bit of damage. And yeah, I could always put a Throw Glaive in there, but I just felt like it was doing more harm than good. Once I started running Fel Barrage, it felt much more fluid to me. Because I'd be fighting my target, you know, whatever, and I'd Vengeful Retreat, and then just start using Fel Barrage. And it just feels like it flows so well, which is part of the reason why I really, really like the talent. Plus, because you just use your Vengeful Retreat, you are Fel Barraging inside of your momentum buff, so it'll gain a lot of extra damage. And yeah, the Demon Hunter's rotation is pretty simple in terms of what you need to keep track of. The hardest part and the hardest thing to worry about is maintaining the momentum buff and not kiting yourself with Fel Rush and Vengeful Retreat. And that honestly just comes with practice. Now, the big thing you guys are going to need to work on, because it was the big thing I need to work on, is you don't want to kite yourself with Vengeful Retreat. You want to make sure you're going in the same line. Sometimes you screw it up, but sometimes you won't. But how you do it is you kind of do a jump turn, and then you Vengeful Retreat, and then you turn back. So if you're a keyboard turner, you really should try to switch to mouse turning. I have a video on key binding that talks about this. Check it out if you need help. But so what you kind of do is you'll be running towards your target, jump, Vengeful Retreat, and go turn your camera back, and you know I'm facing forward, and it used an additional gap closer. Unfortunately, I won't generate that extra fury, but I'll get where I need to go, and my momentum buff will be up. But besides those two things, that's really all there is to the Demon Hunter rotation, guys. It's very, very straightforward if you just follow that priority I told you. It's not overly complicated. It's relatively simple. So I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. Please comment below if you have any questions at all. I will be happy to answer them. And I personally have been having a lot of fun with the Demon Hunter. I wish they were a little bit stronger than they are right now. They're kind of weak based on the nerfs that Blizzard put through. The nerfs to their AoE also hit the single target damage, being that our AoE spell or our AoE spells are our single target spells, which is kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. So, like I said, any questions, please leave them below. I hope you guys liked the video. Thumbs up if you did. And as always, guys, I'm Dottz Gaming. Thanks for watching. Peace.